This, I'm not entirely sure I follow. Liang Kai's eyes flickered as he picked up his chopsticks and turned his attention to his food. Everyone at that table was a veteran of court politics. Liang Kai's evasiveness only deepened their suspicion. The Liang family had always claimed the Shinji camp's firearms were rare imports gathered from overseas, presented to the throne as a gesture of loyalty. Zhao Hong had been delighted at the time and rewarded the family generously for it. Seeing that Liang Kai had no intention of saying more, the others let the matter drop outwardly. Though privately, every one of them was already calculating how to learn the secret behind this cannon, whether it came from the Liang family or from King Yin himself. Ha ha! Sensing the awkward tension settling over the table, Do Wei let out a sudden laugh. He'd invited everyone here himself. Smoothing over moments like this fell naturally to him as host. But privately, he too suspected the Liang family was sitting on something. They seemed far too composed for people who genuinely didn't understand what King Yin had unleashed. The Great Song had banned sea travel for a century now, forbidding anyone from venturing out onto the ocean. In recent years, voices calling to reopen maritime trade had grown louder. But the Liang family had consistently blocked the idea, and Zhao Hong had always deferred to them on it. In court, the Liang family argued again and again that the dangers of opening the seas outweighed even the threat of Beatty pushing south. Coastal piracy had grown steadily worse these past 2 years, which only strengthened their case. Zhao Hong had let the matter rest, and yet the Liang family controlled the overwhelming majority of the Great Song's maritime trade. Whatever secrets they were keeping behind that monopoly, Do Wei found himself just as curious about them as the cannon itself. Whatever the case, Do Wei said, King Yin has become the talk of the realm. That's precisely why I gathered everyone here today. At his words, every gaze turned back to the subject of King Yin. Liang Kai exhaled quietly, relieved at the shift. Prime Minister Do speaks rightly. The matter of King Yin is what demands our attention now. If he continues to grow, the royal family grows with him. And if the throne ever regains the strength it had at its height, none of us will fare well under it. Minister Liang speaks the truth, Han Jing said. His Majesty may treat us with courtesy, but make no mistake, in his heart, he's never warmed to any of us. Qizhou bordered Yinzhou directly, which left Han Jing more uneasy about King Yin than most. Wang Ziyan shared that same unease now. This battle had proven beyond doubt just how formidable King Yin's army had become. Precisely, which is why, on the matter of King Yin, we shouldn't be squabbling among ourselves in court. We need to act as one, Wang Ziyan said. Like the Han family, the Wang family had grown wary of King Yin as well. The others nodded in agreement. Do Wei felt a flicker of satisfaction. This was exactly the unity he'd hoped to build, a shared purpose in containing King Yan's rise. He raised his cup. To the prosperity of the great clans. To the prosperity of the great clans. Everyone raised their glasses in turn. But in that single shared toast, every pair of eyes wandered, and every mind turned over its own private calculations. Jinling City. Word that King Yin had defeated the Yuan family and driven off Beatty had spread through the capital, becoming the talk of every dinner table. Storytellers gathered details from anyone willing to share them, wove the events into dramatic tales, and performed them on street corners as though they'd witnessed it all firsthand. The great songs standing in the world had grown thin these past years. Most news the people heard concerned territory lost. Lands in the west swallowed by Tubo, mountains in the south taken by Jiaoji and Piedmont, the war in the north rotting away with the loss of the Ningjing garrison, and Jianzhou battered nearly to pieces by Shiliang. King Yan's victory broke through all of that gloom like a single bright light. Even tea houses that had long posted signs reading "No discussion of state affairs" had taken them down these past 2 days, letting patrons talk freely about the war in the north. Who would have guessed? This King Yin brews fine wine and fights a fine battle besides. After all these years, it finally feels like something to be proud of. What use is any of these great families if all they do is hoard power and squabble in court? If we want more of King Yan's wine flowing through this city, We ought to be backing him. At Duke Yang's estate, Yang Feng had already worked through 3 bowls of wine and showed no sign of stopping. He was in high spirits. King Yin had won, and in doing so had killed Sarge, king of Beatty's scimitar tent, the very man responsible for the deaths of so many Yang family sons at the Battle of Ningjin years ago. King Yin's victory felt, to him, like vengeance finally delivered for his own family. His Majesty has no shortage of princes, and who would have guessed it'd be this simple one who'd succeed where the others couldn't? Yang Feng reached for the wine again, only to have it pulled away by a pair of slender hands. "Grandfather, you've had enough." A girl in red gave a small huff. After a pause, she added, "Besides, King Yan's illness was cured ages ago. Why do you still call him Simple?" Yes, you're quite right." Yang Feng laughed, looking at her with open fondness. 10 years ago, at the Battle of Ningjin, every Yang family son over the age of 16 had died in that single battle, leaving only a handful of young children behind. The Yang family, once spoken of in the same breath as the Mahis school, had withered ever since. If not for him, an old man with a crippled leg, the last of his generation still standing, there was no telling what might have become of what remained. Thinking of how far his family had fallen, he found himself studying the girl in front of him more closely. "Grandfather? What is it?" She glanced down at herself, checking for something out of place, and found nothing. Yang Feng studied her a long moment, then nodded slowly. "It occurs to me that you and King Yin were born the same year, and he still has no wife." The girl's face flushed as red as the dress she wore. "Grandfather, what are you suggesting? What's wrong with a boy and a girl marrying? Is King Yin not good enough for my Susu?" Yang Feng teased, clearly enjoying himself. "His reputation is rising fast these days. There must be no shortage of families lining up to propose. Don't even think about it." She turned and fled the room, clearly flustered. "Susu." Yang Feng blinked after her, then sighed and went back to his wine. Yang Susu returned to her chambers, heart still racing. Her maid Yuer appeared a moment later. Miss Li Yuan and Miss Chiefing have come a call." Susu had Yuer show them in at once. The 2 women arrived laughing, and once settled in Susu's chambers, one of them produced a portrait from inside her robe with an air of mystery. "Susu, look what I found. Cost me 10 taels of silver." She spread the portrait across the table. It was a painting of a man. "Whose likeness is this?" Susu asked, puzzled. "Who else would be worth 10 taels of silver? It's King Yin, of course. They say it came out of the palace itself. Paintings of him are nearly impossible to find in the capital right now. No telling how many young ladies are scrambling to get their hands on one." The other woman laughed without pausing. "He's still unmarried, you know. I hear no small number of families have already gone to petition consort me directly. Truly, what a catch everyone slept on for years. The whole capital can't stop talking about him now." The first woman went on. "As they say, a fine horse deserves a fine saddle. A beautiful woman deserves a hero, and King Yin is certainly that. The only question left is who will become the next Princess Yin." As the 2 women chattered on, Yang Susu found herself thinking again of her grandfather's words, and the blush she'd only just managed to will away crept right back into her cheeks. Early morning. The bell tolled, and Jinling stirred awake. The city gates opened, merchants streaming in with their carts, while officials dressed in their robes made their way toward the palace. Ever since the Yuan family's attack on Yingguan, Zhao Hong had seemed to work through the night without rest, and court had convened every single morning since. Officials long accustomed to skipping such sessions found themselves dragging through the winter cold at dawn once again. Ma Yuan had escorted Yuan Li into Jinling just the day before, which made today's session carry unusual weight. Every civil and military official was in attendance. Flanked by Liang Cheng, Zhao Hong entered the main hall. As the officials finished their ceremonial greeting, he spoke. "There is another important matter to discuss this morning." Do Wei heard the question and traded a glance with the others. The past few days had brought a steady stream of news. Yinzhou was largely stable now. All that remained was for the court to decide Yuan Li's fate and settle King Yan's reward. The second prince, the third prince, and the crown prince all sat with sour expressions. Word from inside the palace suggested their father was in unusually high spirits, full of praise for King Yin. They knew their father's temperament well enough. When he was this pleased, it was never small. King Yan's achievements this time were undeniable, impossible to downplay even if anyone tried. Still, the jealousy sat heavy in all three of them. Not even the crown prince was willing to speak up on King Yan's behalf today. Zhao Heng scanned the assembled ministers and found their faces carefully blank. None of them wanted to be the one to propose a reward for King Yan, exactly as he'd expected. This court session was his chance to use the great clan's fear of King Yin to his own advantage, satisfy the clans on one hand, while appearing, on the other, to have done everything in his power to reward his son properly. Is the matter your majesty wishes to discuss today King Yan's reward? Ma Yuan spoke up unprompted. He'd returned to the capital and already given Zhao Heng a full report of events in Yenzhou. Zhao Heng had been effusive in his praise, hinting strongly that he intended to grant King Yin all 7 counties of the province. With the other officials reluctant to broach the subject, Ma Yuan decided he would. As far as he was concerned, no one could honestly deny King Yan's contribution here, and the emperor himself clearly intended to reward it. King Yin defeated the Yuan family's army at Yingguan and held the pass. His achievement here is substantial. I believe your majesty should reward him generously, Yang Feng said, rising to speak. This general seconds that, Mo Quan added, standing as well. Zhao Heng nodded, satisfaction settling quietly beneath his expression. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. He'd deliberately let word reach Ma Yuan ahead of time, counting on him to play this exact role today, setting up the court for what came next. As Lord Ma, Duke Yang, and General Mo have all said, had it not been for King Yin, Beatty would likely hold Yingguan by now, and word of that disaster would already have spread through the entire realm. An achievement of this magnitude is without precedent. I've given this careful thought these past several days, and I've decided. The remaining 5 counties of Yenzhou will be merged into King Yan's territory. From this day forward, King Yin bears full responsibility for the defense of Yenzhou and Yingguan. The hall went still. Dou Wei and the others went pale. They'd expected a substantial reward, but not this. Not the entirety of Yenzhou handed over in one stroke. This would make King Yin, in every meaningful sense, the true ruler of the province. Your Majesty, one official said, stepping forward, the Minister of War. King Yan's contribution is real, but had the soldiers of Yingguan not fought and bled as they did, how could Beatty have been defeated at all? I don't believe the credit belongs to King Yin alone. Dou Wei felt a flicker of quiet satisfaction watching this unfold. Neither he nor the other ministers intended to argue with Zhao Heng directly. Far too risky, given the emperor's mood. Instead, they'd quietly arrange for lesser officials to raise the objections first, while they themselves stood by, ready to add fuel from the sidelines. That's absurd. Another voice cut in, an ally of Ma Yuan's, who'd caught his eye moments before stepping forward. No one denies the bravery of Yingguan's officers and soldiers. But Yingguan's garrison alone could never have held the pass without King Yin. Even the memorials from Yingguan's own generals confirm as much. Ma Yuan had spent decades in court politics. He recognized exactly what Dou Wei and his allies were doing, and he'd come prepared for it. Your Majesty, even granting King Yan's achievement, Yenzhou cannot simply be handed to him outright, another official called out. We need only look at the Yuan family's rebellion to see the danger. If King Yin ever rebelled in turn, who would stop him? Ridiculous, someone shot back, voice sharp with contempt. Who was it, not long ago, who stood in this very hall accusing King Yin and General Mo of colluding with the enemy, slandering the very man who saved this dynasty, while the real traitors plotted behind closed doors? And now you dare speak of rebellion? King Yin was wronged then, granted. Another official pressed on, at a subtle gesture from Dou Wei. But once he holds all of Yenzhou, who can promise his ambitions won't grow alongside it? even if His Majesty's reign remains secure. Will the prince who succeeds him? Can the same be guaranteed then? This wasn't pure self-interest speaking, or not only that. He genuinely believed the Yuan family's sole grip on Yinzhou had long been around the court, could never quite close. Handing the entire province to King Yin now risked trading one such wound for another, just freshly opened. On the throne, Zhao Heng arranged his features into careful displeasure and let the argument continue. Your Majesty, another minister offered. King Yan's achievement is beyond question, but entrusting him with the entire capital region of Yinzhou seems unwise. 2 counties would suffice as reward. Since the founding of the Great Song, 8 princes have held command over entire provinces, and most earned that authority through favor alone, without a single real accomplishment to their name. Someone countered. Now that King Yin has achieved something truly extraordinary, why deny him the same? That's an unfair comparison. None of those 8 princes were granted border territories. Yinzhou is the throat of the realm. It cannot simply be entrusted to one man alone. The arguments multiplied, voice overlapping voice, until the hall dissolved into open disorder. Sensing the moment had ripened, Zhao Heng let out a sharp, irritated breath. Enough. I've already decided. King Yin has earned this reward through merit. There's nothing further to discuss. Dou Wei traded a glance with Han Jing and the others. Zhao Heng's tone left no room for misreading his resolve. Even so, they had no intention of yielding easily. The Great Song's foundational understanding, going back to its founding, held that the great clans and the throne ruled together. The emperor did not simply decide such matters alone. Your Majesty, I say this for the good of the dynasty, not out of any quarrel with King Yin, Dou Wei said. Granting him 2 counties is already a considerable honor. This minister seconds that, Liang Kai said. As do I, Wang Zian added. And I, Xie Duan stepped forward as well. Zhao Heng let his expression sour theatrically. And if I refuse? If your Majesty refuses, then this minister is prepared to remove these robes, resign his post, and return home, Dou Wei said evenly. You. Zhao Heng pointed at Dou Wei and the others, then brought his palm down hard against the armrest of the throne, his face arranging itself into weary resignation. Very well. King Yin will receive Ping Jun and Liao Juan. His royal army's numbers will expand to 120,000. He will hold Yingguan going forward. This matter is closed. No further discussion. Court is dismissed. He swept his sleeves aside, rose, and left without another word. Ma Yuan's brow furrowed as he looked toward Dou Wei. Once the emperor's order was given, it could not be unwound. This round belonged to Dou Wei. Dou Wei caught Ma Yuan's gaze and answered it with a satisfied smile. For men like him, this was the best outcome available. Of Yinzhou's 7 counties, 4 sat in the north, 3 in the south. The northern 4 were the poorest land in the province, barely enough between them to sustain an army of 120,000. The southern 3 held the real wealth. The next question, naturally, was how to keep King Yin properly balanced within whatever he now controlled. The Yuan family, Dou Wei said, glancing toward Han Jing, and found Han Jing already looking back at him with the same thought. The Yuan family had taken heavy losses, true, but their foundation in Yinzhou hadn't been destroyed entirely, and there remained, conveniently, no hard proof tying Yuan Li directly to the rebellion. Perhaps the Yuan family still had a role left to play. King Yan's hatred for them, after all, could only have deepened after everything that had happened. And really, who would care, in the end, whether the Yuan family had truly rebelled or not? So long as Yinzhou remained stable, that question could simply be left to settle quietly into the past. 3 days later, a column of palace guards departed the capital, Liang Cheng riding among them. Acting on Zhao Heng's order, he was traveling personally to Yinqing to deliver the imperial decree and convey the emperor's favor in person. 7 days later, the procession reached Yinqing. Reward presented, Director Liang, His Royal Highness King Yin. At the palace gate, Zhao Su and a cluster of officials stood waiting to greet Liang Cheng. Your Highness truly accomplished something remarkable, defeating Beatty and holding Yingguan. Liang Cheng clasped Zhao Su's hand warmly. His Majesty has been overjoyed, singing your praises every day until this old servant's ears have gone numb from it. As a prince, this was simply my duty, Zhao Su said with an easy smile. My father gives me too much credit. The victory had been a real one, but the cost behind it had been just as real. Beyond the destruction across the land itself, both recruits and veterans had paid in blood to hold the line. He let his eyes drift briefly over the imperial decree Liang Cheng carried. Praise mattered less to him than what the decree actually granted. Lu Fu and the commander, unlike him, couldn't stop grinning. They were simply delighted that King Yin had earned the emperor's favor so completely. Don't sell it short at all, Liang Cheng said, leaning in with a wink. His Highness has shown the realm true royal authority this time. For that, His Majesty has prepared a substantial reward. He let the word substantial hang in the air, savoring it, without yet revealing anything more. Zhao Su understood the game well enough. Whenever a reward was large, the eunuch sent to deliver it always angled for a little something extra along the way. Liang Cheng kept his expression deliberately mysterious, and despite himself, Zhao Su found his curiosity sharpening. He called Fenger over and murmured a quiet instruction. A short while later, two servants approached carrying a lacquered box between them. Liang Cheng's smile turned playful. Your Highness, if this were some minor matter, I'd simply hand over the decree directly. But this is no small matter. Please, Your Highness, receive it properly. That only deepened Zhao Su's anticipation. He led the assembled officials in kneeling, facing the direction of the capital. Liang Cheng unrolled the decree and read it aloud. By the mandate of heaven, the emperor decrees, my ninth son, King Yin Zhao Su, governing in Yinzhou, has labored with diligence and won the hearts of the people. In this crisis, he held the fortress and turned the tide of battle, bringing great honor to the royal house. I am deeply pleased. I hereby grant Pingjun and Liaojuan of Yinzhou as territory to King Yin, and entrust him with the defense of Yingguan, with a force of 120,000 soldiers under his command. Receive this with respect. Long live the emperor! Long live, long live! It took Zhao Su a moment to recover after the reading ended. 2 full counties was a generous grant by any measure, and yet beneath the generosity, he sensed something colder running underneath it. The decree had specifically named Gui Tu, Yuan Li's advisor, as the one who'd led the rebellion against him. The court, it seemed, had officially concluded that Yuan Li himself had never rebelled at all. Lu Fu and the commander, initially more excited than Zhao Su himself, looked ready to burst with pride. The commander, never one to hide his thoughts, caught the inconsistency almost immediately. Why is it Gui Tu who rebelled? Liang Cheng didn't hold the outburst against him. King Yin now governed 4 counties and would soon command 120,000 troops, and the commander, as his foremost general, carried weight of his own. Liang Cheng sighed. It's the great clan's doing all of it. His Majesty originally intended to grant your Highness the entirety of Yinzhou, but the resistance proved too strong, and in the end, Yuan Li's case was ruled unfounded. There simply wasn't proof enough to convict him. The blame fell to Gui Tu instead. As for Yuan Li, he's been removed from his post. His third brother, Yuan Feng, will take over as governor of Yinzhou going forward. He glanced carefully at Zhao Su's face as he finished, a flicker of guilt crossing his own. Those damned thieves, daring to spoil His Highness's victory. The commander's face had gone purple, his whole body shaking, one hand gripping the hilt of his sword as though ready to use it. Lu Fu rolled his eyes and offered a thin smile. Though Yuan Li's been dismissed, the Yuan family itself remains untouched. New broth, same old bones, it seems. There are clearly people at court who are far more worried about His Highness than they ever were about the Yuan family. Liang Cheng's expression stiffened for the briefest instant, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. But not quickly enough. Lu Fu caught it, and the smile on his lips only widened. Don't speak nonsense, Zhao Su said, shooting Lu Fu a warning look. He turned back to Liang Cheng. Please convey to my father that I will hold his kindness close, and that I won't fail the trust he's placed in me. Your Highness understands the way of things. Liang Cheng gave an approving thumbs up. Once the decree had been read in full, Zhao Su had Fenger arrange a midday banquet for Liang Cheng and his retinue. After a single night in Yinqing, Liang Cheng grew eager to return to his post and departed with Yuan Li in custody alongside his party. Before leaving, he caught Zhao Su's hand once more. When your Highness next returns to the capital to visit family, this old servant will see to it you're treated well. Zhao Su smiled. Then I'll be sure to thank the director properly, with a generous gift at your door. Liang Cheng's expression turned suitably pleased at that, and with a final bow, he mounted his horse and rode off. Congratulations, Your Highness, congratulations. Once Liang Cheng's party had vanished down the official road, Lu Fu bowed again and again. All 4 northern counties of Yinzhou now belong to you. Your Highness deserves every bit of it. Still, what a shame, the commander muttered, clearly unable to let the matter rest. Your Highness could have had all 7 counties, if not for those scheming officials at court. Lu Fu let out a soft sigh. Years of study had given him a far sharper read on the uglier mechanics of court politics than the commander possessed. He turned to Zhao Su. Your Highness, with Director Liang present, it wasn't the moment to speak plainly. But in my view, this reward wasn't simply the great clan's idea. He paused. Your Highness now governs the 4 northern counties. The Yuan family retains the 3 southern ones. That's not an accident. It's a deliberate balance struck across Yinzhou. Whether His Majesty genuinely intended to grant Your Highness the whole province, or whether this was simply theater performed for the benefit of his ministers, remains an open question. If you sat in that court yourself, what would you have done? Zhao Su didn't answer directly. He turned the question back on Lu Fu instead. This humble official would also... Lu Fu started, then found he couldn't finish the sentence. Zhao Su smiled. There's your answer. In the end, this king is simply one piece on a larger board. Whether my father's intentions were sincere, what the great clans privately calculate, whether the Yuan family lives or dies, none of it matters as much as building our own land into something strong enough that one day we're the ones moving the pieces instead of being moved. In truth, he'd never held out real hope for all 7 counties. He understood perfectly well how unlikely that outcome had always been. With the unrest in Yinzhou still fresh, no one at court would tolerate the province falling under a single family's control again so soon. The grant of 2 counties had, if anything, matched his expectations exactly. Far more pressing than dwelling on what might have been was the question of how to actually build up the 4 counties now in his hands. The chaos of recent months had hit the northern counties especially hard, already the poorest stretch of the realm, now battered further still. Beatty's army, despite its defeat at Yingguan, remained largely intact and every bit as dangerous. And beyond Beatty, Shiliang continued pressing eastward without pause. Facing threats on every side like this, he had no time to waste. Grain needed stockpiling, walls needed raising, and soon. Don't dwell on what didn't happen. You've got 4 counties to figure out how to manage. Plenty to keep you busy soon enough, Zhao Su said, a teasing edge in his voice as he looked at Lu Fu. Your Highness, I would work myself to the bone gladly for this. Lu Fu's excitement flared right back up at the thought. He could barely contain himself at the prospect of governing 4 counties at once. The commander grinned too. If Lu Fu got to govern 4 counties, he'd be commanding 120,000 soldiers, no less thrilling a prospect for him. The other officials and generals wore matching grins. Guarding the 4 northern counties was one thing, but who didn't want the promotions and rewards that came with King Yan's growing territory? The bigger his domain grew, the higher they'd all rise alongside it. Laughter rang out at the city gates, carrying up into the open sky over Yinqing. That same day, several hundred cavalry rode out from Yinqing, following the official road toward Pingjun and Liaojuan. 3 days later, they delivered the imperial decree to both counties in turn. From that point forward, all 4 northern counties of Yinzhou stood under King Yan's rule. The Khan's court. Mule Hongjin sat in his tiger-skin-draped poplar chair. Before him, the 9 great kings of the royal tents stood arrayed in turn. After a long silence, he spoke. Beatty once had 10 kings beneath me. Now only 9 remain. Sarge died at Yingguan. At those words, the 9 kings lowered their heads. Sarge's death struck Beatty the way the death of a crown prince on the battlefield would strike the great song. A wound to national pride, not merely a personal loss. Word of it would only deepen the doubts already circling Beatty's reputation among the surrounding peoples. You all know how Brother Sarge died. It was King Yin. It was the cannon King Yin built. Mule Hongjin's voice rose sharply. Since the battle at Yingguan, King Yan's weapon was no longer any kind of secret. He'd already learned its name, cannon. And my own useless younger brother died there as well. A disgrace. Mule Hongjin slammed his palm against the table and rose to his feet. Bakht, Ram, and Anka bowed their heads. They'd fought that battle themselves, and the shame of it sat heavy on all 3. Father Khan, Beatty must answer this grievance. One king said, "We will throw King Yan's body onto the grassland for the wolves, and only then will the hatred in our hearts be settled." This was Taimuda, Mule Hongjin's eldest son, currently commanding the Sirius King's tent that guarded the Khanate itself. Yes, kill King Yin. When has Beatty ever endured such humiliation? This cannot simply be allowed to pass. The remaining 5 kings spoke in turn, voices hot with anger, while Anka, Ram, and Bakht stayed silent. Mule Hongjin nodded slowly. He'd summoned every king of every tent on the grassland to this court for 2 reasons. The first, naturally, was vengeance for Sarge. Among Beatty's people, this was tradition. If he let Sarge's death pass unanswered, every voice on the grassland would brand him a coward, unfit to wear the title of Khan. A Khan who showed weakness was no Khan at all. He had no choice but to lead Beatty's army south again and lay King Yan's head at Sarge's grave. The second matter concerned the war on the northern snowfields, where the enemy there had also begun turning artillery against Beatty's forces. In his eyes, this represented a serious and growing threat. Mule Hongjin had not earned his reputation as Beatty's greatest Khan by being a fool. Beatty had always excelled at absorbing the techniques of its enemies. After breaking the Ningjin garrison, Beatty's armor and weaponry had advanced considerably. Once they'd captured early cannon designs, they'd moved quickly to distribute them across every king's tent, and had already begun improving on the design, making it more powerful still. In matters of governance, too, since seizing the Black Lands and the Ningjin garrison, he'd absorbed large numbers of surrendered Great Song officials and built out Beatty's own system of rule. Over the past decade, that system had transformed Beatty from a purely nomadic people into one that combined herding with cultivated farming, giving them, for the first time, a steady and substantial supply of grain. Winters remained hard, but Beatty no longer faced the mass starvation of years past. Breaking through Yingguan and marching south to bring down the Great Song. That is the oath sworn by every Khan of Beatty, generation after generation. And now, because of his King Yin, we've lost our best opportunity to move south. Mule Hongjin's voice rang out. However, his tone shifted. Wolves seek their vengeance, but they are never reckless about it. The lesson from the northern snowfields runs just as deep as the lesson from Yingguan. We cannot afford to fall behind in weaponry again. Father Khan means the cannon? Taimuda asked. Mule Hongjin nodded. This was not a threat he could afford to ignore. Beatty's cavalry remained fierce, nearly unstoppable in open battle. But against a fortified position bristling with cannon, that same cavalry had proven helpless, forced into attacks that bled them dry for nothing. But how do we acquire cannons of our own? Bakht asked, the memory of the battle clearly still raw in him. The enemy on the northern snowfields has them. The Great Song's king, Yin, has them. There is no reason Beatty cannot have them as well. From this moment, every one of you will spare no effort uncovering the origin of this weapon, Mule Hongjin said. Yes, Khan, the answer is one. Mule Hongjin was about to continue when a general burst into the tent. Khan, an envoy from Shiliang has arrived. They wished to surrender to Beatty. Truly, Mule Hongjin went still for a moment. Then his eyes lit with undisguised delight. Shiliang sat northwest of the Great Song and southwest of Beatty, a constant threat against Beatty's exposed flank. For years, fighting Shiliang while also trying to focus on the Great Song had drained Beatty's strength on two fronts at once. The war against Shiliang had never truly stopped. Now, at last, Shiliang had broken and chosen to surrender. Congratulations, Father Khan. With Shiliang's surrender, Beatty's strength has grown immensely. We can now turn our full attention to the Great Song and bring it down for good. Shiliang occupied territory northwest of the Great Song, bordering both Qinzhou and Yongzhou, and currently held half of Jinzhou as well. 1 million people, territory equal to 2 Yanzas combined. Its surrender meant Shiliang would now serve Beatty the way Goryeo already did, a vassal state, bound to follow Beatty's orders without question. There's an old Great Song saying, "What's lost at the eastern corner is gained back at the mulberry and elm trees," Ankus said, eyes bright with something fierce. Khan, this is the day the Great Song begins its end. Heaven itself delivers Shiliang to us now. We should follow that will and continue south against the Great Song without delay. The defeat at Yingguan had shaken Beatty's morale badly, and Anka had worried it might slow their momentum south, leaving Sarge's death and the Black Iron King's tense losses unanswered. Now, with Shiliang's surrender, that loss had been more than offset. Yes, we can't let the Great Song off so easily. South again. I want Sarge avenged. I want King Yan's head. With Shiliang surrendered, our flank is finally secure. The Khan should lead every tent in full force and strike the Great Song hard. The other king's eyes burned with excitement, fists pumping in agreement. Ha ha! Mule Hongjin laughed, genuine and unrestrained. Yes, the grudge at Yingguan cannot simply be forgiven. But Yingguan now holds cannon, and attacking it directly will cost us dearly. We need another path into the Great Song. And at the same time, we need to uncover the secret of casting these cannons ourselves. With Shiliang's surrender now in hand, a more promising direction for attack had already begun forming in his mind. But Beatty was no reckless brute, charging blindly into battle. Even the wolf calculated before it struck. Before setting this plan into motion, he intended first to threaten the Great Song's emperor directly. If the emperor submitted, King Yan's head might land in his hands without a single soldier lifting a blade. The Great Song's emperor will learn that Shiliang has surrendered to me, and he'll soil himself with fear, he said. We should use this moment, send envoys to the Great Song, demanding the emperor execute King Yan himself to ease tensions with Beatty. If he refuses, we'll make the Great Song's rivers run red. Everyone exchanged glances and nodded. Where once 3 kingdoms had stood in uneasy balance, the Great Song, Shiliang, and Beatty, now, with Shiliang's surrender, the balance had tilted decisively in Beatty's favor. Frightening the Great Song now might yield gains beyond what battle alone could offer. And if the Great Song refused the demand, the sword would simply do the talking instead, with nothing lost in the attempt. And to support the envoys properly, I want all of you making noise. Apply pressure while they negotiate, Mule Hongjin continued. This was familiar work for Beatty. In leaner years, whenever they'd wanted concessions from the Great Song, they'd simply burned and raided along the border to make their point. A day later, Beatty's envoys departed the Khan's court, reaching Ningxing 6 days after that, before continuing on toward Yingguan. Yinqing, the palace. Zhao Su lounged in a rocking chair, soaking in the sun. Behind him, Luana rested her hands lightly on his shoulders, while Fenger sat nearby with a dish of preserved fruit, feeding him a piece every so often. In the middle of this quiet, easy moment, a maidservant slipped into the courtyard and murmured something to Fenger. Your Highness, the palace gates are crowded with scholars begging an audience, Fenger said, pouting slightly. They keep saying they'll leave, but they never actually do. Luana only smiled, dimples appearing at the corners of her mouth. Since the defeat of the Yuan family's army and Beatty's retreat from Yingguan, Zhao Su's reputation had soared. Scholars who'd once attached themselves to wealthy local families now arrived at the palace gates one after another, offering themselves up, hoping for a position within his household. The King Yan's mansion these scholars sought to join was no longer some minor local power like the old Zhang family. King Yan now controlled four entire counties, more than half of Yinzhou's total territory. It's not that the Great Song lacks a proper system for selecting officials, Zhao Su said. It's that for scholars without connections, currying favor like this is the only shortcut into the bureaucracy that actually works. That's why they won't leave. They're hoping I'll simply pick them myself. He didn't see these scholars as arrogant for trying. What he didn't want was to inherit the officialdom's worst habit, building a following through patronage rather than merit. Now that he governed four counties of his own, that kind of system, in his view, would only bury real talent under favoritism. Before the unrest in Yinzhou had begun, he and Lu Fu had already discussed holding a fair, open examination to select officials properly. That plan would move forward next. Chewing on a piece of preserved fruit, he stretched and rose to his feet. Now that he controlled the four northern counties, there was no room left for idleness. The devastation from recent months had hit those counties hard, already the most worn-down territory in the Great Song. Now worse still. As their lord, it fell to him to rebuild this land into something strong and prosperous. This was his foundation, after all. If the day ever came when he found himself surrounded on every side, trade routes severed, this land and its people would be the only thing left to rely on. Your Highness, Master Yang requests an audience. One maidservant had barely left before another arrived with this new message. Zhao Su let out a helpless smile. Time to get back to business. He made his way to the front hall, where Yang he already waited, though his expression looked far from pleasant. Zhao Su's brow furrowed. Every general and official across Yinzhou was celebrating as though the new year had come early. For Yang he alone to wear such a grim face was unusual enough to draw real concern. Your Highness. Yang Yi's voice was low and heavy as Zhao Su approached. Something has happened. What's wrong? Zhao Su's confusion was genuine. Bringing the northern counties under his rule shouldn't have meaningfully shifted local commerce one way or another. At least not in a way that would create trouble. He couldn't think of anything that would have made business operations suddenly difficult. This morning, merchants from the great clans came to the trading house. They're demanding the monopoly rights be returned to the palace, their money refunded, and they say they won't buy palace goods again. Yang Yi's expression had gone dark as a storm cloud. Something cold and angry settled in Zhao Su's chest as he listened. Whatever Zhao Heng's true intentions had been with this reward, sincere or calculated, the great clan's hostility toward him now needed no interpretation at all. He'd assumed sitting through that court session would be the worst of it. Instead, they were already moving to instruct their own merchants to tier up contracts, working to box him in economically before he'd even finished consolidating the new territory. These bastards. Zhao Su's voice came out clipped, sharp. In truth, he should have anticipated something like this. When the Yuan family had first taken control of Yinzhou, the 8 great clans had moved against them in much the same way, targeting them at every turn. The Yuan family had eventually been forced to attach themselves to the Han family for protection, trading loyalty for a voice in the imperial court. At the same time, Yuan Li had quietly built trade lines with Beatty behind the great clans' backs, sidestepping their influence entirely and turning the Yuan family into Yinzhou's unchallenged power, strong enough that even the 8 clans together couldn't touch them. Now Yuan Li's strength had been gutted, and 4 entire counties had passed into Zhao Su's hands instead. Of course, the great clans would move to suppress him, and in doing so, quietly prop the Yuan family back up, giving them room to recover and breathe again. In his own estimation, the great clans had far more reason to fear him than they ever had Yuan Li. He was the Great Song's 9th prince, carrying the throne's own mandate. Yuan Li, for all his strength, had only ever ruled a single province. But Zhao Su's growing strength threatened to tip the entire balance between the great clans and the royal family decisively toward the throne. Your Highness, what should we do? Yang Yi's anxiety was plain on his face. If the great merchant houses cut off trade with the palace entirely, palace trade volume would collapse by half overnight. And King Yin had only just begun the costly work of governing an entire province. Money was about to flow out faster than ever. The monopoly rights aren't the issue. There's a signed contract. They think they can simply walk away from it. Zhao Su said, "That's wishful thinking on their part. The real problem is that the decision to actually buy our goods rests entirely in their hands." He felt the anger sitting in his teeth even as he said it. This time, the great clans really had found his blind spot. Their grip on commerce across the province ran deep enough that if they simply refused to let his goods through their networks, there was very little he could do to force the issue. They were willing to take a loss themselves just to box him in. Seeing that King Yin didn't seem to have an immediate answer, he let out a breath. "Your Highness, perhaps we let them have this one." "Absolutely not." Zhao Su's eyes narrowed. Commerce and trade weren't a side concern. They were Yinzhou's economic lifeline, the foundation beneath everything else he hoped to build. If that road to capital accumulation closed, then all his technical knowledge, everything he carried in his head from another life, would mean nothing. Yinzhou would never see anything resembling an industrial transformation. The reasoning was simple enough. Goods that couldn't be sold generated no profit. And craftsmen, raw materials, none of it ran without silver. Without it, every workshop he'd built would slide into debt, and debt eventually meant death for the whole enterprise. Workers would drift back to subsistence farming, and any hope of moving Yinzhou from pure agriculture into industry would die with it. The cost of failing to industrialize was the same cost paid by any society overtaken by more advanced powers, a fate he had no intention of risking. And beyond that, without steady silver coming in, his policy of low taxation couldn't survive either, and with it, the people's loyalty would erode. He was already stretching Yinzhou's resources thin, just funding cannon production and shipbuilding. Asking more of the people themselves simply wasn't something they could bear. He needed a way to break this standoff, and he needed one now. "Go back for the moment," he told Yang Yi. "I have a few things to think through." "Yes, Your Highness." Yang Yi bowed, opened his mouth as if to add something, then thought better of it, sighed again, and left. Once Yang Yi had gone, Zhao Su retreated alone to his study. He intended to draft a memorial to Zhao Hong, though not one accusing the great clans of orchestrating this directly. They were far too careful for that. On paper, this was simply merchants making their own commercial decisions. What he actually needed was to secure formal legal standing for the yen trading house, locking in his commercial position across the territories already under royal control before the great clans could erode that ground as well. There was a second matter, just as important. He wanted maritime trading rights, the same rights the Liang family currently held exclusively. This was insurance, a path he was quietly preparing in case his relationship with the great clans deteriorated completely, or the great song itself slid into deeper chaos. If that happened, maritime trade would still give him a way to pull in silver and goods from beyond the mainland entirely, beyond anyone's ability to choke off. In an age where the seas mattered as much as the land, controlling the ocean routes could outweigh almost any disadvantage on land alone. The trouble was, if Zhao Heng's interests genuinely aligned with the great clan's desire to keep Yinzhou's power balanced, none of this would be granted easily. He'd need something substantial to trade for it. The obvious answer was cannon technology. He suspected, in fact, that this commercial squeeze wasn't purely about containing him. It doubled as leverage, a bargaining chip the great clans intended to use against him directly. Even Liang Cheng, during his visit to Yinqing, had raised the subject more than once, lightly, almost in passing. That alone told him this wasn't only the great clan's idea. Zhao Hong had clearly turned the same thought over himself. The only reason the emperor hadn't pressed the matter outright was timing. Pushing for it so soon after handing a major reward would have looked transparently greedy. He'd anticipated something like this ever since the battle at Yingguan, and he already had a plan in place. They wanted cannons? Fine. He had no intention of handing over the steel cannons his own soldiers relied on. He'd give them wrought iron instead. When he'd first designed the iron casting process, he'd planned with exactly this scenario in mind, both for mass production and for the eventual question of what, if anything, he might someday sell. Canon technology had followed a clear historical progression. Bronze first, then wrought iron, then steel. Bronze was costly and inefficient. Wrought iron split further into lower-grade white iron and better-grade gray iron, with gray iron still falling well short of steel in performance. All he needed to do was substitute iron for steel and ordinary gunpowder for his granular formula, and he'd have an entire production line of low-end cast iron cannons ready to go, cheap to produce, prone to misfires, limited in range. Weapons that posed no real threat to the advantage his own soldiers carried on any real battlefield. Trading weapons like that for real concessions felt, to him, like an entirely reasonable exchange, especially since his own artillery program had no intention of standing still. Every iteration from here would keep improving, while whatever he handed over would remain frozen at this lower tier. And in exchange, the silver he gained could fund the next round of real advancement. All of this remained speculation for now. He'd need to see what the great clans actually wanted from this commercial pressure before deciding how hard to push back. He'd already turned over worst-case scenarios, too. If they refused his terms outright, he could still manage things on his own through quieter, less direct means. With that settled in his mind, he picked up his brush and began to write. Your Highness, Your Highness. He'd just finished the memorial and was preparing to send it to the capital when Lu Fu's voice rang out from beyond the study. There was real anger in it. What's wrong? Who's gotten under your skin this time? Zhao Su asked, almost lightly, as he picked up the memorial Lu Fu had brought and began scanning it. It's Ping County and Liao County, the local gentry there. Lu Fu's expression had gone dark. It's the same pattern we saw when Shanggu County first changed hands. These old county officials are perfectly obedient on the surface, collecting their salaries, doing nothing of substance underneath. They're not openly defying us. They're just refusing to actually move. The same playbook the wealthy families used when they tried to provoke Shanggu County into outright rebellion. None of this surprised either of them, in truth. The local gentry across Yanzhou had come to view Zhao Su as something close to an existential threat. There simply wasn't room for their kind of entrenched wealth to flourish under his rule, and, as the old saying went, cutting off a man's fortune was no different than killing his family. Of course they saw him as a thorn lodged deep in their side, one they meant to dig out by any means available. According to what Su Ku had gathered, since the imperial decree had placed Yuan Feng in charge of what remained of the Yuan family's holdings, wealthy families from across the province had been flocking to pay their respects, not just offering money, but sending their own sons to lead private soldiers under Yuan family banners. It looked unmistakably like a coordinated effort to help the Yuan family claw its way back to power. And despite Ping Jun and Liao Juan now formally belonging to Zhao Su's territory, the gentry of both counties had been making their own pilgrimages to Fanyang as well, a clear, deliberate signal that they intended to draw a hard line against him. Your Highness has already broken their soldiers once, Lu Fu said, brow furrowed. I think that's exactly why they won't risk raising arms against us directly now. Your Highness's strength has grown too much for that kind of open defiance. So instead, they've turned to something quieter. Dirtier. Something sharpened in Zhao Su's expression. He was curious now, genuinely, what fresh maneuver the gentry had cooked up this time. Lu Fu sighed. This official ordered a full land survey across both counties, and on paper, every wealthy family cooperated without complaint. We arrested those caught violating the new land registrations. But the local officials in both counties keep finding ways to delay actually implementing the decree. Soft resistance, never refusing outright, just never quite getting around to it. Zhao Su listened, then snapped the memorial shut with a sharp crack. He wasn't afraid of the gentry coming at him with open force. What worried him was exactly this, the slow, grinding resistance that simply stalled everything indefinitely, eating away at the time he needed to bring both counties fully under control. There's really only one way to deal with this, Zhao Su said slowly. We pulled the firewood out from under the pot. He found himself thinking of the scholars still crowding the palace gates, hoping for positions in his household. When it came down to it, the local officials causing this trouble were simply products of the Great Song's existing promotion system, a system built by design to favor entrenched wealthy families. Even in Yin County and Shanggu County, where he held direct control, the officials serving him had still come up through recommendations from Lu Fu and others already in his service. He reviewed and approved appointments personally, but the underlying current of favoritism in that system was something he couldn't fully escape, not as long as he kept operating within it. It was time to tear the old selection system down completely. Otherwise, he'd never have real access to genuine talent, only more of the same names, recycled through different patrons. Pull the firewood from under the pot. Lu Fu turned the phrase over for a moment, and then his eyes lit with sudden understanding. King, Yin had spoken before about holding a fair, open examination to select officials on merit. This surely was what he meant. Fanyang, the Yuan estate. Yuan Li lay propped up in bed, a concubine seated beside him, spooning porridge between his lips. He still looked weak, but color had returned to his face, clear evidence the wound was healing well. After Ma Yuan had escorted him to the capital, he'd spent several days in genuine fear for his life. Only once he'd been formally dismissed from his post and released back to Fanyang had he finally allowed himself to relax. His gamble had paid off. The court could find nothing solid enough to convict him, only enough to pin the blame conclusively on Gua Tuesday. He'd braced himself for a much harder road than this. That he'd walked free and been allowed to return to Fanyang at all still struck him as remarkably fortunate. On the long ride back from Jinling, he turned the situation over in his mind again and again until the logic of it finally clicked into place. The court's distrust of the Yuan family ran deep, but Emperor Zhaoheng and the great clans were equally wary of King Yan's rising power. Keeping the Yuan family alive, even diminished, served a purpose, a counterweight, a piece still on the board they could use against him. My lord, Governors Shui Pan and Zhu Rong of Ping County and Liao County request an audience. The estate's steward's voice carried in from beyond the door. Let them in, Yuan Li said, gesturing for the concubine to set aside the porridge bowl. Moments later, two middle-aged men entered, one tall and gaunt, the other hunched and stooped. This humble official, Shui Pan, greets Lord Yuan. The taller man hurried forward, hands clasped, his smile a touch too eager. And I, Zhu Rong, greet Lord Yuan as well. The hunched man echoed, bowing in turn. Yuan Li regarded them both flatly. Don't address me that way. I'm no longer governor of Yinzhou, just an idle man now. King Yin is your lord. A flicker of displeasure crossed Shui Pan's face at Yuan Li's cool reception. He assumed it stemmed from their delay in coming to pay respects. After all, gentry from every other county had rushed to see Yuan Li the moment he'd returned to Fanyang. He spoke quickly to correct the impression. My lord, you misunderstand us completely. Ping County and Liao County now fall under King Yan's territory. Lord Lu and his officials have been targeting our families relentlessly. That's the only reason for our delay. Something in Yuan Li's expression eased at that. Ping Jun and Liao Juan had once belonged firmly within Yuan family territory. Losing them had cut deeper than almost anything else in this whole disaster. But the emperor's decree left no room to argue, and he'd had no choice but to swallow that loss in silence. Still, he'd grown irritated watching every other wealthy family arrive promptly while Shui Pan and Zhu Rong, his own former subordinates, had stayed away so long. Now that he understood why, the tension in him eased considerably. I see. But coming to Fanyang now, aren't you concerned King Yin might learn of it? It wouldn't reflect well on either of you. Shui Pan, answer at once. What's left to fear, truly? At worst we lose our posts. My lord knows King Yan's nature better than anyone. What truly frightens us is that he'll seize our lands and holdings outright. That's exactly why we've come, to ask for your guidance. You remain the backbone of Yinzhou's gentry, after all. Ha ha! Yuan Li's laugh cut short the instant it pulled at his wound, and he gritted his teeth through the pain. He drew a slow breath before continuing. There's no doubt in my mind how this ends. Look at what happened in Shanggu County. King Yin has always despised wealthy families like ours. Sooner or later, the two of you will share Gao Yuan's fate. He felt no regret over Shanggu County's loss. In the battle for Yingguan, the bulk of the Yuan family soldiers had died at King Yan's hand, and now Ping Jun and Liao Juan had been stripped away as well. He and King Yin were sworn enemies now, plain and simple. How could King Yin possibly expect to govern two counties the Yuan family had run for generations without resistance? And the emperor and the great clans had already made their calculation clear. They were counting on him to serve as exactly this kind of counterweight against King Yin. Working against him now wasn't betrayal. It was simply playing the role they'd assigned him. But Yuan Li had never been a man content to stay a pawn on someone else's board. Just as he'd once built the Yuan family into Yinzhou's dominant power through his own will, he intended to restore that glory now, and push it further still, if he could manage it. To do that, though, King Yin would have to die. And with Xue Pan and Zhu Rong sitting in front of him now, the first piece of that plan was already falling into place. Everything my lord says rings true. That's exactly why we're afraid, Zhu Rong said, his face crumpling into something close to genuine grief. Lord Liu and the palace are currently combing through every field claimed by gentry families in both counties. Many of our own sons have already been imprisoned over it. As the three of them spoke, the steward slipped back in and murmured something low in Yuan Li's ear. Yuan Li's expression shifted at once. He turned to Xue Pan and Zhu Rong. Wait here a moment. I have another visitor to receive first. The two men understood and withdrew without protest. A short while later, a young man entered, led in by the steward. Lord Yuan, relieved to see you've come through unharmed. The young man offered a respectful bow. Do I look unharmed to you? Yuan Li's voice carried a sharp edge, though something almost proud crept into it a moment later. You probably didn't expect me to settle a matter as serious as a treason charge so cleanly. There is never much to settle, in truth. King Anka holds your move against King Yin in high regard. He's prepared to continue working with you in good faith. The young man's smile didn't waver. That caught Yuan Li off guard. He'd assumed Beatty would be furious over their defeat at Yingguan, not sending emissaries with offers of continued cooperation. Still, remembering exactly how that defeat had cost his family, Beatty's own doing, however indirectly, he allowed his irritation to show. Your Beatty treated my family this way, and now you come asking to cooperate? That's almost laughable. I should have you seized this instant and sent to the capital. I'd earn no small credit for it. The young man showed no fear at all. If Lord Yuan truly meant to arrest me, you wouldn't have let me through your gates in the first place. That tells me you still want this cooperation to continue. After all, aside from Beatty, who else can help the Yuan family remove King Yin and reclaim Yinzhou? Something in Yuan Li's thinking clarified at that, and a flicker of genuine surprise crossed his face. I still don't have your name. Zhuge, Deputy Commander of the Black Iron Guard. A young man worthy of his reputation, then? Yuan Li nodded slowly. The Black Iron Guard was Beatty's covert intelligence arm, established under Khan Mule Hongjin's order and overseen by Kudu, tasked specifically with surveillance of the Great Song, and Yinzhou above all. Yuan Li had crossed paths with their operations enough times to know the name well. Since Tuoba Li's capture and execution at King Yan's hand, the organization had gone quiet for a stretch. This Zhuge, evidently, was his replacement. You honor me, Zhuge said, his stiff features managing only a faintly unnatural smile. Yuan Li pushed himself upright with help, swinging his legs off the bed, frowning as he settled. Then tell me plainly, what do you want from my family? And what exactly are you offering in return? This time, Beatty sets no conditions, Zhuge said. King Yin is an enemy to your family, and an enemy to Beatty as well. The enemy of an enemy is a friend. And given how much the Yuan family lost in the attack on Yingguan, consider this Beatty's way of making amends. Privately, Yuan Li allowed himself a thin, knowing smile. Zhuge could call it unconditional all he liked. Beatty was still using him as a weapon against King Yin, which was itself a condition, dressed up in generous language. Outwardly, though, he kept his expression pleased. You're too kind, truly, but I'm curious how you intend to follow through. Yinguan belongs to King Yin now, and the mountain roads through Yinshan are under his control as well. There's no way to continue our old trade arrangements privately. Not anymore. Zhuge's smile softened. Lord Yuan, there's more than one road from Beatty to Yinzhou. There's the sea as well. Yuan Li startled, then understanding dawned. He'd been wondering how Zhuge had managed to appear in Fanyang at all. This explained it. Like Yin County, Fanyang bordered the sea directly. Beatty had no navy of its own, but putting captured Great Song shipwrights to work building merchant vessels was hardly an insurmountable problem. Zhuge, satisfied with the look on Yuan Li's face, pressed further. Does Lord Yuan trust our sincerity now? His eyes shifted, weighing something before he decided to share one more piece of news. There's one more matter Lord Yuan may not yet know. Shiliang has surrendered to Beatty. The Great Song now stands alone against us. What? Yuan Li went rigid and felt the strength drain out of his legs. Shiliang's surrender meant two of the Great Song's most dangerous enemies had become one, like granting wings to an already fearsome tiger. From here forward, the Great Song would have precious little hope of holding its ground. Something close to satisfaction flickered through Zhuge's eyes. For the Great Song, this news was nothing short of catastrophic. For Beatty, it was cause for celebration. The Yuan family, he knew, had always played both sides at once. With a shift this dramatic on the frontier, he was confident Yuan Li would land precisely where Beatty needed him to. Sure enough, after a moment to steady himself, a smile spread across Yuan Li's face. I've always trusted Beatty's sincerity. 6 ships will reach the Fanyang coast soon, carrying gold, silver, jewels, armor, and weapons, Zhuge said. And Lord Yuan should act with confidence. The Khan himself has said, even if you cannot remain in the Great Song forever, you'll always have passage by sea to Beatty. We will treat you well there. And when Beatty finally takes the realm, you'll be granted high office and generous standing. He'd arrived ahead of Beatty's official envoys to Jinling by design. If the Great Song's emperor refused a hand over King Yan's head, the Yuan family would become Beatty's next move. Yes, yes, of course. Yuan Li nodded eagerly, color returning to his face. With that, Zhuge seemed in no mood to linger further. He bowed once more and withdrew, backing out of the room. Once Zhuge's footsteps had faded entirely, Yuan Li sat shaking his head slowly, a slow swell of pride building in his chest. Zhao Heng hadn't executed him, clearly intent on keeping him alive as a counterweight against King Yin. The Han family had stayed close to him for similar reasons. The great clans wanted him as leverage too, and now Beatty, of all parties, offered the same. 3 separate powers, each quietly propping up the Yuan family for their own purposes. He was, in this moment, a fish swimming comfortably in deep water. King Yin, you couldn't have seen this coming. My family lost the last round. We won't lose this one. A thought surfaced, and he called for Shui Pan and Zhu Rong to be brought back in. He'd held some hesitation before, weighing his next move carefully. With Beatty's promise now behind him, that hesitation evaporated entirely. My lord, Shui Pan and Zhu Rong returned, eyes fixed eagerly on him. King Yin must die, or the gentry of Yinzhou will never know peace again. I have a plan to deal with him. The moment you return, hand over your land registrations as ordered, and then Shui Pan and Zhu Rong listened closely, nodding along at every turn. And if the plan fails, Yuan Li added, voice firm, you can still flee to Fanyang. I'll see you both kept safe. By your word, my lord, the two answered together. Yingguan. Mo stood staring at a saber mounted on the wall, lost in thought. It had belonged to his father. The battle for Yingguan had receded further into memory with each passing day, but his longing for his father had only deepened with time. Here, In Yingguan especially, his father's presence seemed to linger in every corner. No one had ever told him exactly how his father had died. But from soldiers who'd served at Yingguan, he learned that on the night his father died, Xiao Yuanshan had held a secret meeting with an official assigned to the investigation. Deep down, he was certain the two events were connected, that Xiao Yuanshan's hand was somewhere in his father's death. One day, he intended to find the truth of it. General, a delegation claiming to be Beatty envoys has arrived at Yingguan's gates. Zhang Han's voice broke through his thoughts. With all 4 northern counties of Yenzhou now under King Yan's rule, Mou and the Imperial Guard troops under his command held Yingguan only temporarily, until King Yan's own forces arrived to take over the defense. Once that transfer happened, Mou would be free to return to the capital and rejoin the Imperial Army proper. Beatty envoys? Mou's brow furrowed. Coming so soon after the battle, the timing alone was strange enough to give him pause. Is there an army behind them? He asked. Yes, at least 2 King's Tent forces, camped roughly 5 miles out, Zhang Han said. Mou nodded. This wasn't a decision he felt comfortable making on his own authority. He needed King Yan's judgment on it. Send word to Yanqing, he told Zhang Han. What? Shiliang has surrendered to Beatty. Zhao Su's voice cracked through the quiet of the palace study as he absorbed the news from Yingguan. By Mou's account, Beatty's envoys had arrived at the pass, and Beatty's forces were once again pressing right up against the border. Lu Fu stood nearby, his expression caught between confusion and unease. Beatty's been at war with Shiliang for years. Wins and losses traded back and forth. Even the Ma family's troops in Jinzhou caught up in it. Why surrender now so suddenly? Zhao Su's gaze settled on the map mounted on the study wall, tracing the borders of the Great Song, Beatty, and Shiliang in his mind. A tall building doesn't fall in a single day. The rot has to be there first, even if it's hidden. Think it through. Shiliang has held half of Jinzhou for nearly 10 years now. In that same stretch of time, the Great Song has grown steadily weaker, while Shiliang hasn't managed to push its advantage even an inch further. That tells you something. Years of constant war have hollowed Shiliang out from the inside, even while it looked strong from the outside. Lu Fu nodded slowly, turning it over. Of the 3 powers, the Great Song, Beatty, Shiliang had always been the weakest. Caught fighting the Great Song over Jinzhou while Beatty pressed in from the other direction, it simply hadn't had the strength to sustain a war on 2 fronts indefinitely. And given the old animosity between Shiliang and the Great Song, dating back to disputes from the founding of both states, an alliance with the Great Song had never really been on the table. Between the 2 evils, surrendering to Beatty was the only path left. In the east, Beatty already held Goryeo as a vassal state. Now Shiliang too, Beatty's reach had grown substantially in a single stroke. This only means Beatty grows stronger still, Lu Fu said, worry plain in his eyes. Their ambitions toward the south will only deepen from here. King Yan had only just secured the 4 northern counties, barely begun the work of stabilizing and developing them. And now this. The pressure on the northern frontier was about to intensify, and badly. Shiliang soldiers had always fought with real skill, and the half of Jinzhou under their control now effectively extended Beatty's reach straight into Great Song territory. Did they say what business brings them to Jinling? Zhao Su asked. Shiliang's surrender was done. Dwelling on it further accomplished nothing. What mattered now was understanding exactly what Beatty's envoys wanted. Only that they have an important matter to discuss directly with the emperor. Nothing more, the soldier reported. Zhao Su let out a short breath. Tell Mou to let them pass. As King Yan, he had no formal authority to refuse passage to an enemy state's envoys. That decision belonged to the throne alone. All he could do was let them through. Yes, your highness. The soldier bowed and left. Once the door had closed, Zhao Su sank into thought. 2 of the Great Song's oldest enemies had just merged into one. The threat from the north had multiplied overnight, and Beatty, he knew, had already mastered matchlock musket production. He couldn't afford to fall behind now. Beyond artillery, it was time to move on firearms more advanced than the matchlock, flintlocks. Just as with the cannon, He had no intention of walking the slow, conventional path of development. There was no reason to. The historical progression of these weapons was littered with dead ends and wrong turns. And with the knowledge already sitting in his head, he could skip straight past those mistakes. With his current technical capacity, he could build directly toward what was actually achievable now. Skip the matchlock arquebus. Go straight to the flintlock. The two mechanisms differed mainly in their ignition method. A matchlock relied on a length of slow-burning cord, something like an incense coil, that a soldier kept lit and touched to the gunpowder when firing. A flintlock used flint instead, striking sparks the way a modern lighter would, igniting the charge on impact. The real difficulty lay entirely in the firing mechanism itself, both the materials involved and the precision of the craftsmanship required. That would take time to perfect, but it would still come together faster than building an entire generation of matchlocks first, only to abandon them for flintlocks later. He rolled his wrist once, pulled a sheet of paper toward him, and began to sketch. Jinling. Zhao Heng walked through the Imperial Garden, consort me at his side. The unrest in Yinzhou had left him with a lingering unease about the Yuan family that hadn't fully faded. But Zhao Su's success in stabilizing the province and driving back Beatty had eased some of that tension considerably. Between the Yuan family and his own son, he found himself trusting King Yin far more. Enough that he'd already decided to hand Yingguan's defense over to him fully, withdrawing the Imperial Guard troops there once Zhao Su had finished training his own recruits to take their place. That would free up more Imperial Guards to keep a closer watch on the great clans instead. Still, he hadn't forgotten what his own father had told him on his deathbed, that a king could trust only the power held directly in his own hands, no one else, not even family. And yet it remained an undeniable fact that Zhao Su's victories had elevated the throne's prestige considerably, given the entire Zhao clan something to take pride in within the capital. So he intended to make a public show of imperial favor toward his son, enough to keep King Yin content and loyal in his post guarding the northern frontier. Defense was defense. Favor was favor. For an emperor, the two weren't in conflict. They served entirely separate purposes. That favor, fittingly, found its outlet through consort me. In recent days, Zhao Heng had taken to spending more time at her side. As the two walked together, a eunuch approached and handed a memorial to Liang Cheng, who presented it to Zhao Heng in turn. "It's from Sewer," Zhao Heng said, showing it to consort me. At the mention of her son, her practiced smile faltered, something wistful creeping in at the edges. Zhao Heng noticed at once. "My consort, Mrs. Su. It has been nearly a year since he left for Yinzhou," consort me said softly. "So many honored ministers have come calling on me lately, all hoping to marry their daughters into his household. He'll turn 17 after the new year. Not so young anymore. Perhaps it's time to begin considering a princess consort for him." Zhao Heng nodded. Yinzhou remains unsettled for now, and he has more than enough on his hands. Once things have quieted there, I'll have him return for a visit. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Her smile returned in full. Zhao Heng turned his attention to the memorial. His brow furrowed at the request to formalize Yin County's trading house as an imperial merchant operation, and furrowed deeper still at the mention of maritime trade rights and a proposed Yinzhou navy. But further down, where Zhao Su offered to supply the throne with a batch of cannons, his expression eased considerably. From everything he'd heard, artillery had been the deciding factor in repelling Beatty at Yingguan. He said nothing aloud, but the thought had already taken root. There had even been a moment, briefly, when he'd considered demanding the casting methods outright from King Yin. He let that idea go almost as quickly as it came. The reasoning was simple enough. The court was thick with powerful clans these days. Hand over cannon casting knowledge from his own son, and what guarantee did he have it wouldn't end up benefiting those same clans before it ever strengthened his own imperial army? So he set aside any thought of demanding the casting technique itself, but cannon supplied directly to the imperial army that he intended to hold him to. Given how reasonably King Yin had framed the request, refusing outright would have looked petty. The merchant status request alone was simple enough to grant. The maritime trade rights, though, that was another matter entirely. The great clans would never simply let that go without a fight. Your Majesty, I must object. Liang Kai's face had gone red in the Golden Hall. That morning, Zhao Heng had brought two proposals before the court. The first, granting the Yin County Trading House formal status as an imperial merchant house. The second, permitting King Yin to engage in maritime trade. Dou Wei's expression had darkened the moment he heard it. Just days earlier, at that very banquet, he'd united the great clans against King Yin on the commercial front. Now King Yin was striking back, and these two requests aimed squarely at undoing that pressure. The imperial merchant designation, though, was untouchable. That was a matter purely within the royal family's own discretion. Nothing they said would move Zhao Heng on it. The maritime trade question was different. That, at least, he could still contest. Your Majesty, he said, pirates plague the coastline year-round, striking again and again. I worry King Yin venturing onto open water won't simply prove useless. It may draw pirate attacks directly to Yinzhou's shores. The province already faces pressure from both Xiliang and Beatty. Adding piracy on top of that serves no one. Precisely. The maritime ban stands as ancestral law, Han Jing added, stepping forward. Ancestral precedent should not be cast aside, Your Majesty. Where containing King Yin was concerned, every great clan but the Ma family stood united, and Han Jing, naturally, was glad to add his voice in support of Liang Kai now. With Dou Wei and Han Jing both speaking up, Liang Kai felt something in his chest ease. Maritime trade was the Liang family's lifeblood. There was no version of this where he'd allow King Yin a foothold in it. Zhao Heng's expression stayed even. He'd expected this resistance from the start. Where King Yin was concerned, opposition from this quarter was simply inevitable, regardless of the specifics. No, another voice cut through the hall. What the sea bans, the sea can also open. Why should the ancestors' word on this stand forever unquestioned? Dou Wei turned, frowning, toward the speaker. It was Mi Heng, King Yan's maternal uncle, and these days, a man who'd risen quickly in the emperor's favor. Mi Heng glanced at Liang Kai before continuing. And besides, King Yin can defeat Beatty's army, yet a band of pirates would be beyond him? In my view, it's the Liang family seeking to keep their monopoly on maritime trade intact, dressed up as concern for the public good. Slander, Liang Kai snapped, his fury genuine. What proof do you have for an accusation like that? He turned to Zhao Heng, his expression shifting to something wounded. Your Majesty, the Liang family has served this throne loyally for generations, without a hint of divided loyalty. We've offered up countless treasures and rarities over the years. I ask Your Majesty to weigh these words with care. Zhao Heng's expression softened slightly at that. Of the 8 great clans, the Liang family had, in his estimation, always treated him the most generously. Your Majesty, Ma Yuan added, sensing the shift in the emperor's mood and seizing the moment. Yinzhou suffered greatly during the recent unrest. His Highness King Yan's trade ambitions are simply a means of funding the province's recovery. Zhao Heng nodded, his resolve hardening again. Yinzhou's stability mattered more than almost anything else right now. And the Liang family, for all their generosity, had monopolized maritime trade for so long they seemed to have convinced themselves the entire Great Song coastline belonged to them by right. There was no real reason King Yin should be barred from the same waters. Still, the Liang family's loyalty over the years made him reluctant to alienate them entirely. He settled on a compromise. Very well. King Yin intends to send a shipment of artillery to the capital shortly. Zhezhou has suffered pirate raids for years now. I'll have 2 of those cannons sent to the Liang family for coastal defense. Would that satisfy you? Liang Kai froze. Not just Liang Kai, Dou Wei, Han Jing, every minister present went still at the offer. Artillery was, by now, the single most talked about subject in the entire court. The rumors alone had everyone's curiosity burning. Just days before, Liang Kai himself had quietly proposed sending Liang family craftsmen to Yinzhou to study cannon casting, a request Zhao Heng had simply ignored. Well, Zhao Heng watched Liang Kai's reaction with quiet satisfaction. To him, This cannon represented something the royal family alone should possess, a treasure unique to the throne. Liang Kai's brow knit tight, but he said nothing. Dou studied him carefully, turning something over in his own mind. He'd long suspected Liang Kai knew more about cannon technology than he let on. He'd tested the theory once already at that banquet, without success. This time, he intended to force the issue into the open. "Your Majesty, allow this minister a moment to consider," Liang Kai said. Dou and Han Zheng traded a glance. Dou spoke first. "Your Majesty, I've long admired King Yan's cannon. I hope your Majesty won't show favoritism in this matter." He made a show of wanting it for himself, though in truth, the desire was entirely genuine. Still, if the secret could be pried loose from Liang Kai instead of from Yinzhou directly, that path suited him better by far. This, Zhao Heng allowed his expression to look troubled. It wasn't an act of generosity on his part. He was simply confident in King Yan's casting method. He'd been assured, in no uncertain terms, that even if rivals managed to imitate the design, none would match the quality of what King Yan had already sent. With that confidence behind him, a plan took shape. Let this gesture quiet the great clans for now. Their constant pressure on the matter had grown tiresome. And besides, once King Yan's artillery actually reached the capital, they'd find ways to get their hands on examples of it regardless of what he decided here. Sending it or not made little practical difference in the end. "Very well. I'll consider this further over the coming days before we discuss it again," Zhao Heng said, deliberately leaving the matter open, watching the effect ripple through the assembled ministers. With that, he dismissed the court. Once Zhao Heng had withdrawn, Dou made his way to Liang Kai's side. "Minister Liang, why lose your composure over 2 cannons? I'm not exaggerating the danger," Liang Kai said, his voice low. "What we face at sea is no less threatening than Beatty pressing south. My family has profited from maritime trade for years, true, but we've paid for it too, in battles against pirate fleets. We've even encountered enemy ships carrying cannon of their own. Facing threats like that, the Liang family has purchased artillery from foreign traders to escort our vessels, and we've attempted to replicate the design ourselves. But what we've managed falls well short of King Yan's work. So you do have cannon. All this time, hiding it from everyone." Dou's voice carried real anger now. Seeing the irritation on Dou's face, Liang Kai pressed on. "Prime Minister Dou, please, don't be angry with me over this. I've thought it through carefully since that banquet. I'm prepared to share what casting knowledge my family possesses with you. In exchange, I need your help securing the maritime trade rights." "Huh, that's simple enough." Han Zheng made no effort to hide his delight. "If it means access to cannon casting, that's a small price to pay." The battle at Yinguan had shaken everyone in the capital. No one in this room had any intention of being left behind in weapons technology now. Even Dou Wei hadn't expected the Liang family to be sitting on something this significant, this quietly, for this long. Dou Wei glanced toward Fan Xingluan and the others and found the same eager interest written across every face. They'd already moved to squeeze King Yin commercially in hopes of eventually forcing the cannon casting secret out of him directly. Now, with the Liang family holding a working alternative, that same commercial leverage could be turned to extract something else from King Yin entirely, concessions of a different kind. Both paths benefited them either way. In that case, Dou Wei said, "We'll move together at the next court session." Liang Kai's relief was visible. "Since King Yin already has working artillery, there's little point hiding my family's version any longer. Let King Yin see it plainly, so he stops treating his cannon as some untouchable treasure. We'll let the 2 designs stand side by side and see which truly performs better." The others nodded, though it was clear from their expressions that Liang Kai himself harbored some doubt about how his family's imitation would actually compare. Either way, seeing King Yan's cannon directly had become the real point of interest. As far as any of them were concerned, the ideal outcome wasn't King Yin holding a monopoly on cannon technology, nor the Liang family holding one either. 2 competing producers, locked in rivalry with each other, suited their interests far better than either side holding all the leverage alone. With the plan settled, they each departed in turn. 6 or 7 days later, Zhao Heng once again summoned every official to an early court session. Since Yingguan's crisis had passed, he'd largely returned to his old habits, holding court when he remembered to, skipping it when he didn't. The officials had long since grown used to the unpredictability. But on this particular morning, as they gathered in the hall, word reached them that froze the blood in every vein. Beatty's envoys had arrived the night before. Before the shock had fully settled, 3 Beatty representatives strode into the main hall and presented their credentials. On the throne, Zhao Heng's expression had gone dark and heavy. He'd learned the purpose of their visit the night before and hadn't managed a single hour of sleep since. Whatever Beatty wanted, it meant serious trouble for the northern frontier. That much was already clear. Below the steps, Do Wei's face had fallen into a slump of its own. Zhao Heng had summoned him to the palace the previous night to discuss exactly this. Beatty's purpose here was clearly not a peaceful one, and he didn't dare act rashly in a matter this delicate. One misstep, and the great song itself could face ruin. He suspected every official in the hall was thinking precisely the same thing.